anyone can pay off their debt and become debt free, but like not everyone will, because it's going to require certain things and not everyone's willing to do those things.
If you look into the future a year from now and you're in this same exact position, are you going to be okay with that? These are the questions you have to ask yourself.
Because once you can start to get the finances under control, you start to feel like you have the rest of your life under control. And then that's what's going to boost the confidence to do bigger and better things.
A lot of this debt you did not get into super quick, and then we just want to like take the problem and get rid of it. The hard work and the discipline, that is what literally shapes you and creates these better habits.
Welcome back to the show. Lauren and I are back for our weekly episode where we talk all things money. Lauren, the other day someone was asking me about just like my opinion on what I thought was like the most destructive thing to someone's finances. And it kind of stopped me because I had to really think about it. And some of the things that came to mind were like if you don't have a high income, or you marry the wrong person, or you get into a house that you can't afford, things like that. But then what really like summed it up in my head was just having bad habits around your money. And that can take the form of like a lot of different things, from like your spending to your saving habits, your investing habits. But I feel like if you just don't have the right habits, you don't have the right kind of relationship with your money that's going to push you towards not just like financial stability, but in the future towards like building wealth even.
Yeah. And I feel like I definitely understand what you're saying there. So if you have habits in like one area, I feel like those carry across to others. It's probably pretty rare to have like habits like on smaller purchase things that aren't going to fall over into like the bigger purchases, or like your housing or whatever, or your car purchases. You know what I mean? So I feel like those all add up no matter like which area of your finances you're talking about. At least that's how I see it.
100%. And you know, I always like to think of it like it sounds kind of funny, but I like to optimize being lazy. And like the way I think about it is if I have like the right habits set up in my life, like I can almost go on autopilot for some of the things that I know are going to push me in the right direction. You know, like I have the same habits when it comes to like eating. I'll eat the same types of foods in the morning and make breakfast around the same time. I'll do the same things with my money, right? Like I know, like I log my expenses certain times of the week or whatever. And I check in with things regularly, and it allows me to almost be a little bit, you know, like quote unquote lazier, because like I just fall into the same patterns, but those patterns are actually better for me. So I don't know. I thought today would be a good opportunity to talk about bad habits that are probably not helping your financial journey. And then also on the flip side of that, habits that you could be implementing that I think are going to make things better. So why don't we jump into this first question?
All right, here's the first situation. So this one says, I'm 42 years old with no savings and I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. Long story short, I'm a 42-year-old divorced dude making minimum wage with nothing in savings. But I'm trying to turn things around. Mostly people my age are talking about investing, real estate, and even FIRE. But I think I'm too old to catch that boat. Am I just too late in general, or should I start accepting that I'll work the rest of my life?
I mean, that's a tough situation. You know, at 42, you've missed some of the best years of your life to build wealth, to be in the market, to kind of put in the hard work so that you can start getting into that phase of life where you're like, all right, I can almost like coast off of the hard work that I've done. You know, in your 40s is kind of like the end of that period of working really hard. And I think as you get into your 50s and 60s is when you can start to take the pedal or take your foot off the gas pedal a little bit. But if you're in this situation, like, and you're just getting started, like that's going to be a tough transition into those older years. I would say though, like, should this person accept that they're just too old and that they're going to have to work the rest of their life? I mean, even just practically, like you can't accept that, you know, like you're not going to be able to work for the rest of your life. And so I think what this person needs to do is figure out like, what are the things, you know, we were talking about habits, like what are the things that they've done for the last 20 plus years of their working career that led them to this position where they're 42 years old with nothing saved? Like you got to kind of figure that out first. And I think that's a really important part is figure out the bad things that you've been doing for 42 years. Is it, you know, hating your job so much that every Friday you just want to spend all the money that you have left in your bank account? Or is it you have a tendency to buy certain things or whatever it is, you know? Figure out what those things are and why you haven't been able to save money. I think that's going to be the best place to start.
I feel like probably the reason they haven't been able to save money is it says that, you know, they're making minimum wage at 42. Yeah. So I feel like that's one of the biggest things for me. You know, we can talk about what you can do. They can run all these scenarios, investing, real estate, FIRE. You're just not there yet. I think you need to start with like the very basics of like, let's look at your career. Something isn't working there. If you're 42 years old, still making minimum wage and don't feel like you can get ahead, then we need to start with the foundations and work on building up that career, whatever that means for you. Obviously, we have absolutely no information, to know this person's education level or, kind of what field they're in or whatever. But that's going to have to be the first place, because if they're making minimum wage, they're probably not even able to pay much more than like their rent. You know what I mean? So, I feel like that's going to be the biggest piece to this whole picture, because you're not going to be doing fire if you're making minimum wage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, if this person said they were divorced, if they had a partner before this, someone working minimum wage, someone having like a career job, it's like, all right, you could probably make that work. I'm sure the divorce didn't make things easier, but yeah, minimum wage into your 40s, like, this person probably just hasn't figured out what they want to do in life. And they've been able to coast for the last 20 years, whether that's because they were married to someone or because they had help from family or whatever it was. But like, yeah, now is the point where you kind of have to start taking control of your life. And I don't know if this is like a bad take or a controversial opinion, but I feel like if you're still working minimum wage in your 40s, it's because you haven't really sat down and asked yourself, like, what do I actually want to do with my life? You've maybe just hopped around from job to job that's willing to pay you minimum wage. And I feel like at that point you really got to sit down and figure that out, because you're never going to get out of this situation if you just, plain and simple, if you just don't start earning enough money to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like probably the mindset that this person is in, like, is it too late, or am I just going to accept my fate and work for the rest of their lives? Like I said, we have to start with like the foundational piece, which is increasing like their career and their income, because I don't think we can even really start much of that investing until we fix all of that. We don't even know what this person's financial picture really looks like. But I also think they're just in like a really bad headspace where it's like, they're kind of in like this, okay, it's zeroed or it's like 100. Like, I'm going to have to invest and do all these crazy things and get into real estate and fire, or I'm just going to work for the rest of my life and have nothing. I've just missed the boat. You know what I mean? Like, how about we hit like a middle ground there? Like this person's 42 years old. Let's say you get your career in line. Let's give you a few years for that. And then you can invest until you're 70 years old. That's a really good amount of time in the market that you could build up a nice little nest egg for yourself, that you would be able to have for the future. I don't think that we have to just go one direction or the other. How about we have something in the middle and have, a little bit, at least a nice chunk of change for retirement. If you're, if this person does build up their, their income a little bit and they're able to put away, let's say between like, I don't know, $300 to $500 a month even, that's still several hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time they retire. And so I think we need to like zoom out and be like, okay, let's change the mindset around this and let's do some things to get this ball rolling forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because if they fall into that trap of thinking like the all or nothing, like that's where they're going to get stuck, because there is a middle ground here. There is that opportunity where they can look at the next 20, 25 years and say like, all right, I still have time to continue invest or to start investing to really get this stuff in order. Like you said, if you give them a few years, let's say by 45, they're actually able to start like a career where they're earning a decent income, and they invest till they're 70, that's 25 years of exposure to the market. Like, you can grow a good amount of money in 25 years. And again, like this person, like you said, if they can break away from that all or nothing, they can see like, all right, it's just going to look different than what other people's retirement looks like. It's going to look different than maybe what I thought my own retirement would look like. But at least if I can do something about it now, like that's the big part here. Like they gotta do something. And I imagine like being 42 years old, still making minimum wage, you're recently divorced, like you're probably at a lower point in confidence, And I think if you can do some of these things, like start implementing the right habits, start focusing on what the career is going to be, like that's going to help boost the confidence. Start actually investing your money. Like you have to start putting in the right type of behavior for where you want to be going in the future. You can't just look at where you're at now and be, sad about it and think like, all right, well, nothing's going to change. You're not going to get anywhere doing that.
No, for sure. And, I don't know what we've been like taught that like retirement is, that like we retire and like we're living on like an island or something, that we're constantly going on vacations. Like it's going to look different. Yeah. And there might be people that do that, but it can look different for every person. Maybe they will have to work in some type of capacity for the rest of their lives. It's probably not going to be a straight 9 to 5 or some like high labor job. You know what I mean? But, with their probably their Social Security, if it's around at that time, and, whatever they're able to save, if they start taking the action now, they're probably going to get by on obviously that and potentially a little bit of supplement with like working. But I think it's going to have to be, defined differently. Again, I think it's all black or white. It's like, okay, I have no retirement or like I'm living in a yacht. You know what I mean? So I think we just have to find a middle ground somewhere and be okay with that. And I just plugged this in really fast. So if this person, let's do the math here. So if this person at 45, okay, give them a few years to get some stuff together, obviously coming out of minimum wage, create like their emergency funds, and obviously building that up is going to take some time. So if they were to, let's say they start investing from 45 till 70, which there's lots of people who work full time till 70. If they start with nothing and they contribute $500 a month, whether that's through an employer 401k or just something they're doing on the side with an annual rate of return of 8%, they're looking at almost $500,000 in a retirement account, which from where they're at right now probably feels like really far from reality. But that's the magic of being in the market for that long, is being able to compound that and get up to that amount of money. So I think that's very encouraging from where they're at right now. We're giving them a few years to get back on their feet, and they still have $500,000 by the time they retire at 70. So working, a 9 to 5 the rest of their life is not, something they're going to have to do. But yeah, I don't know. I think that there's a lot more hope here than this person is currently feeling.
Yeah, I always like to look at the numbers, and like $500,000 is a whole lot more money than they have right now.
Yeah.
So I think, if they can get started early, or if they can get started now and use the next 25 years to their advantage, like they're not going to end up with nothing, but they got to get started now.
Yeah.
But why don't we move into the next one? So this person wrote, I made a series of financial mistakes and lost everything. Looking for advice on starting over. Over the past few years, my life has completely unraveled and I'm struggling to figure out how to pick up the pieces. It all started during the pandemic. I was doing okay financially, working a steady job and saving little by little. When the stock market dipped, I thought I saw an opportunity to grow my savings quickly, so I went all in on a few stocks. Things looked promising, but as the market shifted, I realized too late that I didn't know what I was doing, and I nearly lost my entire savings, about $25,000. To make matters worse, my marriage began falling apart. The financial stress combined with other personal issues became too much, and my wife left me and took our 5-year-old daughter with her. Now I'm living paycheck to paycheck, trying to make ends meet. My credit card debt is piling up because I can't keep up with basic expenses. How do I start over when I feel like I've hit rock bottom?
Oh, man. That sucks. I first want to say, I always say this, and there's people that literally will argue with you, but this is exactly why I don't, timing the market, you need to just you need time in the market, not trying to time it like this, because this is exactly what happens. This person thought this was a really great idea, and maybe it was for a little bit, and then now they've lost $25,000 in their wife and daughter. I feel like when we get to this point of rock bottom, there almost needs to be a place of like acceptance rather than like jumping into like, okay, what can I do to fix this? Because like we just talked about, psychology has a lot to do with our money. So if we're starting from a place of like, I'm at rock bottom, I hate myself, I hate my situation, I think it's really hard to change out of like a place of hating yourself. So like, how can you get to that place of acceptance and then try to move forward from there? I don't know. That's always in these situations, I'm like, you almost have to get over like the mental piece and be willing to, okay, it's ready. I'm ready to change. And, this shitty situation happened, but these are my circumstances and I'm ready to move forward. Kind of seems like he's in a really bad place right now.
Yeah. I feel like when people think of rock bottom, they think of it in terms of like their like physical situation, like this person. All right, my wife left me. I lost all my savings. Like maybe they're losing their job. I don't know. Right. Like their physical situation is bad, but I feel like true rock bottom is when your mind gets to that point where you're like, things cannot get worse for me. Of course they can always get worse, but like you start to look at, all right, things are as bad as they've ever been. And I finally want to do something about it. Like that is when you get rock bottom, and that can happen regardless of what's going on the outside. I think the best way for this person to like start over is, like you said, for them to accept that this is where they're at and then start making a plan to move forward. Like I don't think anything is going to fix like what you've done in the past, right? And it might not fix the marriage, but at least it can help take you to a better place where like, hey, maybe you can actually start to see your daughter again or something like that. Like maybe you can actually get onto better terms with your ex-wife. But like, if you just continue to wallow in this like pity of like, okay, for the last several years, things have just been shitty and they've gotten worse and worse. Like it's never going to get better. Like you got to accept that this is where you're at, and then you got to start making a plan to move forward.
Yeah. And I feel like $25,000 is not a small amount of money, of course, but I feel like in the lifetime of, our working career and our savings and investing, like it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like you can move past it. The thing is, it was a really big learning lesson and something you'll probably never do again. Like you'll probably just do, dollar cost averaging every single month. I'm not going to try to time it and make a lot of money, But, I just wonder about this person's situation because it says they're living paycheck to paycheck, credit card debts piling up, probably who knows, maybe they're still supporting, their wife and daughter, child support and all that stuff. And who knows what their lifestyle was like before. We don't really have all that information. Like I said, once they sort of come to the terms of acceptance, then it's like, okay, let's start to make a plan and move forward from there. So do they have to change their housing? Do they have to radically change their lifestyle? Do they have to do what the last person does and change their income a little bit? Change is hard, but it seems like this person could probably use some changes to get things going in a different direction.
Yeah. And like anytime I hear someone say I'm living paycheck to paycheck, just trying to make ends meet, like to me, the first thing that comes to mind when someone says that is like, cool, let's audit what you're spending your money on, because most people, and this isn't everyone's situation, but I would argue that most people who feel like they're in that situation, there's money being wasted somewhere, and like people always have all these types of like justifications. Well, like I need to be able to enjoy life, or it's like self-care, or like I need to have, blah, 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 blah. Right. Like at the end of the day, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're piling up credit card debt, like we got to cut everything out of this. Right. Like that's the only way you got to make breathing room between what's coming in and what's going out. And the only way to do that is cut all the BS out of there. Once you can actually do that though, then I think you can start to see what the breathing room can do. That breathing room is how we actually start to make progress, right? Like it doesn't matter what you're bringing in. What matters is that gap between what you bring in and what you have to spend, because then that's when they can have the flexibility to like save up an emergency fund, pay off debt, and then actually start investing again, hopefully build up that $25,000 and then more beyond that. Cause like you said, now that they've made that terrible mistake, they're probably not going to fall into that same trap again. Hopefully. Right.
Yeah, for sure. And it makes me think about like, I've talked about this all the time, but like my debt-free journey and like what that looked like for me, it was like, I needed like a real big kick in the butt to be like, okay, like I can do this and I'm going to change some things. Like whether this person needs to get a part-time job probably would be good for them anyway, to just really fill up their time with work and not to be thinking about all this messy life stuff, because then they have some more money that's coming in, clean up their messes, clean up their credit card debt, start building savings up, and then really get on a good life path. Because I feel like once, life stuff too, but once the financials sort of fall into place here, it can feel a lot better to, be able to, pay for things, not feel like you're, so stressed financially, because obviously that's where they're at right now. But yeah, I hate to say it, but like, they just need to buckle down a little bit, and probably be a good thing to not think so much, get to work, and start digging themselves out of this, and then move forward and understand that, you have a lot of life lessons here, but, it's not too late to change,
Yeah. I feel like people like here, he's asking like, how do I start over when I've hit rock bottom? Like it's a simple equation between what you bring in and what's going out, like, and I think if you really do have like an income problem, like what you're bringing in just doesn't cover the bills, there is no BS to cut, then like, we have to focus on increasing the income. Like, and I think most people lie to themselves if they say, I don't have the time to pick up a second job. And like this person described it, right? Now they do not have a marriage. Like, so there's no one waiting for them at home. Their daughter's not at home for them to take care of. Like now is really the time where you don't have other responsibilities, even though that's, in this case, it's not necessarily because of things that are good, right? Like that sucks, but you don't have other responsibilities. So like you said, filling that time with work, not only is it going to like get your mind to think about other things, it's going to keep your mind off of like the shitty life that's going on in the background, but it's also going to help you earn more income. And then we focus on making sure that every dollar is actually going towards where it needs to go. Like it doesn't need to be complicated. And I think for most people, like that's it, focus on what's coming in and what's going out. And like I said, increasing that gap is where you start to make progress. Yeah.
And I always, whenever you think about someone that says like, I've hit rock bottom, or people that that have hit rock bottom, whatever capacity, like mentally, drug addiction, gambling addiction, whatever. It's like, okay, how did you get to rock bottom? And to get out of it, it's going to have to be like the exact opposite behavior.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you just have to take inventory. Like how did I get here? He knows kind of what's happened. Okay. I'm going to have to go the complete opposite direction here to change my life. And I think that's obviously the hardest part about people hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
because they've lived the same life for so long and now it's extremely hard to get out of it, digging out of a hole essentially. So yeah, I think this person definitely has there's definitely room to grow here, but yeah, I feel bad, They just need to get a little of encouragement and get going. And once they start digging themselves out of that hole, I think things will, move forward quickly.
Yeah, and don't think you can time the market. Like it's one of the silliest bad habits when it comes to money. Like just thinking that you're smarter than millions of people who put their money into index funds. Like it's just, for most people, it just doesn't work out. Like put your money in index funds, don't even think about it anymore, and then just live the rest of your life. But why don't we move into our last one?
So this one is kind of a little bit different than the past two. So this one says, just finished paying off $31,000 of debt. And here's what I've learned. I just made the final payment and I'm completely debt free. $31,000 in 15 months. Here's the huge things I learned along the way that can hopefully help. Number one, the debt snowball method gave me the small wins that built momentum and courage to tackle larger debts. Number two, using a 0% balance transfer with a small fee saved me from crushing interest and gave me breathing room. Number three, daily budgeting with a simple planner showed me exactly where my money was going. 4, addressing the mental health roots of my debt was just as important as tackling the numbers. 5, sacrificing luxuries for a year was hard, but gave me freedom and showed me life's quality isn't tied to constant spending. Number 6, the Freedom app helped me block online shopping and break destructive spending habits. Number 7, paying down debt boosted my confidence, which led to new opportunities, higher income, and ultimately more freedom. 8, there's no easy fix to any of this. Only consistent work, discipline, and responsibility will get you out of debt. I feel like I could have written this, Nick. It's not everything nice. I learned too. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like 2 of them really stood out for me. The first one about like the snowball method gave them the momentum and courage. And then the other one about tackling their debt actually boosted their confidence, which in turn like boosted the rest of their life. Like I feel like those 2 things really stuck out to me because number one, like people always have this argument when you lay out the numbers on paper, doing the avalanche method where you focus on the highest interest rate first, that one always makes the most like mathematical sense on paper. Like always it's going to make sense, right? It's just putting the numbers first. But like people aren't in debt because of the numbers. People are in debt because they make bad decisions and they are tied to their emotions so deeply. Yep. Like the snowball method is like, it is what works in favor of that, like it focuses on paying off the smallest one first. So that way you can get an actual win under your belt. So you can feel like, all right, I can actually do this. Like there is some confidence built up there. And then you have the momentum of that. And then you can start rolling that forward, like I always tell people, like when you're going to start paying off debt, like granted, depending on like if you have like high interest credit card debts and then your first debt is like a 0% interest, I'll probably tell you to focus on the credit cards. But for most people, I would say, look, focus on just the smallest debt. Let's just get it paid off. Then we can find out the most mathematically optimal route after that, after you've built up the confidence and courage. But then like this person said towards the end though, like paying down the debt actually boosted their confidence, which affected things outside of their debt payoff journey, which I think was really awesome because it said led them to new opportunities, higher income, and ultimately more freedom. Like I think that's a huge one there because once you can start to get the finances under control, you start to feel like you have the rest of your life under control. And then that's what's going to boost the confidence to do bigger and better things.
Yeah. And I also feel like maybe this is a little woo, but I also just feel like, when you start to, I've told this to everybody, but when you start to like, treat your money well, I feel like you're rewarded with more of it. This exact same thing happened during my debt-free journey. I paid off all of my debt, worked really hard for 3 years. And then after that, like I was in a decent, career path, but it wasn't super high paying. And as soon as that finished up, I got a really cool opportunity to like switch into the big tech. And now my income is, way up. So it's like, it's so different, like how this all works when you start to have that confidence. And like I said, you start treating your money well, and then I just feel like the universe like just rewards you. Maybe it is too boo, but you know what I'm saying. But, this person, I liked what they said about, the mental health roots of all of this, because we already talked about all of that in the past 2 scenarios, how much that impacts, what you're doing with your money, whether that's a coping mechanism, as far as like your spending goes, or even how your parents like handled money growing up. That's super ingrained in you. And I think that's, I love that they included this on here because that is a super important part of this.
Yeah. And then what they wrote at the end there too, like there's no easy fix to any of this. Like I feel like that's the biggest one for me. Like, especially like I've worked with people and you lay out the debt payoff plan for them and it's like there's, there's no magic button I can push. Like at the end of the day, it's what are you bringing in? What's left over? How much can we put towards debt? There's all the other stuff around that. But like in terms of like how much progress are you actually, like the timeline for making progress, that's really what it comes down to. And for a lot of people, this is like years of work, and it doesn't happen easily, right? Like it gets easier over time because you just get better at sticking to the plan. But like the daily habits, the daily choices you have to continue making, like those are still the same choices that you have to make the entire journey, and for a lot of people, like they look at it and they're like, wow, that's a really long time to do these things. And it is, but like it's focusing on that discipline of like sticking with it day after day after day. And that's why, like, I think for people who go through like this, and we talked about it in the last episode, who don't have like an easy out, they go through this years long process of paying off debt. Like they come out on the other side like a new person because they've built up the confidence, they've built up the discipline of what they're spending. Like they've figured out how to tackle their life and like take control of it. And like guarantee, like I would say more often than not, like that leads to you taking control of other areas of your life as well.
Yeah, that's literally me. My completely changed when all of that was paid off. We get asked all the time, should I take things out of should I take money out of my 401k to pay this? Should I do this debt consolidation, blah, blah, blah. And there's certain times where debt consolidation could be good. I probably would never tell you to empty your 401k for some debt, but it's because they're looking for a quick fix. And the problem is like a lot of this debt you did not get into super quick. And then we just want to like take the problem and get rid of it. But the hard work and the discipline, that is what literally shapes you and creates these better habits. I'll always tell people, just you have to suffer through a little bit, Yeah. And the thing is, if you buckle down and work hard, I feel like a lot of people, like even in my journey, like I was only making like, what was it? Like $48,000 a year, maybe 50 with like some side hustles I had. And my debt payoff was like 52,000. You would never think that I could pay something like that off in like just shy of 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure people say that all the time. Like, and I'm sure people in this situation would be like, well, how much were they making if they could pay off 31,000 in 15 months? You know what I mean? Like, and we don't know if did they have some savings that they threw towards it or whatever, but yeah, you really just need to go through some hard times and learn, some things through it. So I don't know. I love that one too, because that is really what's going to change the entire future with your money.
I hate when people say that, like, oh, well, yeah, like what was this person making, like to be able to do that? 100%. And I'm like, it doesn't matter what they were making. What matters is like, I've seen people who make $180,000 who are stuck in debt. I've seen people who make, $30,000 who are stuck in debt. And like, there's not one person or one type of income that's going to allow you to get out of debt. It's like, it's the type of person that you have to become that's going to let you get, like anyone can pay off their debt and become debt free, but like not everyone will, because it's going to require certain things and not everyone's willing to do those things, like it's just, I mean, this person could honestly have made $60,000 for the year and just lived on half of it and, paid off the rest on debt. We don't really know the situation, but I mean, I've given my numbers out many times and it doesn't look realistic, but I'll tell you what, it was, and I can't believe it's all over now and I'm completely on the other side of it. Yeah. I always like to look at it like, no matter what, like the time is going to pass, right? Like, and you can either look down, this person 15 months from now, right? They could either end up in those 15 months and nothing has changed. The situation's gotten worse. They're still thinking about the action that they're not taking to improve it. Or they can, suffer through those 15 months, but then they come out and life is like totally different. Like I always like to point that out to people, like whether you do the hard thing for the next year or you don't, like that year is going to pass and it's going to pass a lot quicker than you think, and usually like time passes a lot quicker when you're in these, like, when you're so busy, like focusing on this plan, like time will pass quicker. And where do you want to be after that time has passed? Like that's my way of always looking at it. Yeah.
If you look into the future a year from now and you're in the same exact position, are you going to be okay with that? You know what I mean? Yeah. These are the questions you have to ask yourself.
All right. I think that wraps up today's episode. And as always, if you found some value out of it or you learned something new, the best way you can help us grow is by sharing this with a friend and subscribing.
Yeah. And if you want to have your money question answered on the show, you can visit our website, justanothermoneypodcast.com, and click the submit a question button. And don't forget to join us for our next episode of Just Another Money Podcast. information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.